Hi guys, so we are back. So in this video we're gonna talk about how to make classes and how to make object of that particular class in Python. So let's get started really quick. So let me just create a file. Let me call it Python OP. Too many O's. Alright, so now if I want to create a class, all I have to do is I'm going to say class, and then I can do, like, let me just give a class name. Let me say Brachiouraux, and then now as you can see that the moment I press enter, it's indenting, right? So this is how Python declares a scope, and now everything that I write within this indentation level is gonna be within the scope of this Brachiouraux class, right? So if I say, if I want to create a variable, let me call it burgers, and if I give it a value 5, now what's going to happen is we have just created a variable called burgers, which is within the scope of the class Brachiouraux. Now if you notice carefully, you're going to see that I didn't have to declare the input type of the variable, right? Like we have to do in Java. Like in Java we have to, whether it's a string or whether it's an integer or whether it's a boolean value, we have to declare the input type before we initialize a variable. But in Python is so smart that the moment you create a variable, it tries to recognize by just seeing what the input type is, right? So you don't have to declare the type of the variable. So now if we just print Brachiouraux, before I run this code, what should we expect to see? Should we expect that the program gives out this value of burgers? No, because we are not accessing the variable called burgers, right? So if I just run the program really quick, let me see what files are there. Okay, Python OP, right? So Python OP, and it's basically just recognizing the class, right? We are not doing anything else. But now if I just go on to access this variable which is within the class, which is burgers, and if I run the code again, it should give us the value, right? It gives us the value. So now if I don't want to do that, I don't want to be able to declare Brachiouraux every time, right? Because it's just, because there could be so many objects and so many functions, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an object of this class, and the way I view object is like they basically act as a special agent, right? They tell you that you don't have to think about anything else. I am going to be representative of the class, and I will be given all the privileges to access all the variables and functions within that particular class if you give me permission, right? So let me just create an object. Let me call it James Bond, because James Bond is a special agent, and to give James Bond the to make it an object of the Brachiouraux class, what we have to do is we're going to say Brachiouraux and then do this. And now what we have just done is we have made James Bond basically an object of the Brachiouraux class. So now James Bond also recognizes all the variables and all the functions that are within the scope of the Brachiouraux class, right? So now interesting thing is, now if I say James Bond instead of Brachiouraux, it will still be able to understand that, right? Just for the effect, let me comment this out and let me create a variable called pizza, and let me give it 10. And now if I say pizza, if we run the program, what should we expect to see? We should expect that the program recognizes that James Bond has become an object of the Brachiouraux class, and it also recognizes the variable called pizza, which is within the scope of that class. And since the variable contains the value 10, so I should be able to print the value 10, right? So if I run the program, it prints the value 10, right? So now let me tell you, let me for the illustration of the power of scopes, let me just create another value called pasta, and let me say pasta is 20, right? And now if I try to access pasta, right, with the James Bond object, will I be able to print pasta value? The answer is no, because pasta is not within the scope of the Brachiouraux, right? Brachiouraux class, and James Bond is only the object of the Brachiodox class. It is not the king of the world. It doesn't know what pasta is, right? So if I try to run the code, what's gonna happen is it's gonna give an error, right? It's gonna say Brachiodox object has no attribute pasta, and it is damn right. It doesn't understand what pasta is. But now if I, interestingly enough, if I put it inside the scope of this, and if I just, let me just comment it out, although I didn't need to, but anyways, now since pasta is within the scope of Brachiodox, James Bond as an object of that class, it knows what pasta is. So now if I run the code, it should be able to print 20, and it does, right? So this basically shows you how indentation works in Python, and this is how you create a class, and this is how indent, this is how you create variables, and this is how you create an object of that particular class, and this is how you use the object to access the variables within that class. You can, at similar way, you can create a string. Let me call it I am a string, and let's say what's up. All right. So if I use the James Bond class, a James Bond object to access that value, I'm going to say I'm a string, and now what we should expect to see is it's gonna recognize that string value, right? All right, so this is basically how you create a class, and this is how you create an object, right? So that's basically for this video. In this next video, I'm going to try to cover the concept of functions, right? And how you create functions are basically methods. So I'm going to talk about that in the next video, guys.